Oh yeah, it is on. All right, cool. But like, can you hear me? Is it on? Kind of thing. I guess it's on. Whatever.
Right. Oh my god. I did see that too. Thank you for reminding me of that. I wasn't too sure who was doing that. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to start the music. Well, stuff. I don't know. It's a fun song. Dude, and then this is happening where it's taking forever to load. I don't know if I need to like clear cookies or something on YouTube or what. The freaking CIA's finally tuning in, bro. Look at this. It's goofy. Oh, man. Okay. This is unattainable. Alright, let me try something off screen here. Um, how do you clear settings? There you go. Clear. Go to site settings. Delete data. Reset permissions. Now let's go back and reload. See what happens. Oh, I made it worse. No. There we go. Okay, maybe that'll work now. Here's my YouTube page. YouTube wants to show notifications. No, thank you. That's okay. I don't need YouTube notifications. Um, yeah. Wow, what a time to be alive. Yeah, let's check out the regular news and see what everybody's talking about. It's probably going to be a Houthi. Dude, what is happening today? What do I have open? I don't have anything open.
Tonight, the dramatic escalation in the Middle East. The U.S. leading airstrikes
You are killing me today.
in Yemen, and now the Houthi rebels vowing revenge. The U.S. and allies launching airstrikes on 60 targets in Yemen in retaliation for repeated attacks on ships in the Red Sea. The Iran-backed Houthis defiant. The new missile attack today.
Oh, you know
President
what?
Biden calling the Houthis a terror.
Okay, I have an idea. I think I might know what it is. Oh no, it's not even that. Like, it's still 720p. I could drop this down, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, who cares?
Group. What is he prepared to do if the attacks don't stop? Also tonight, the relentless winter weather sweeping across the country.
What will he do?
Cyclone, blizzard, and whiteout conditions slamming the Midwest. Travel chaos. More than 8,000 flights canceled or delayed. Danger on the road.
Dango,
18
Houthis.
inches of snow or more expected. We're tracking it. President Biden breaking his silence about Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, what he said about Austin keeping his cancer battle and hospitalization secret. A first under the Biden administration, the Justice Department deciding to pursue the death penalty for the gunman who killed 10 black people in a racist rampage at a Buffalo supermarket.
That is news to me.
Countdown, 3 days to Iowa.
And this is pointless.
Candidates have
Like, why are they showing, like, who's going to come in second place as if it matters? Like, you know, Trump would never pick DeSantis as his VP, but I don't know.
Vince,
Okay.
will this be the coldest
Maybe that's the
caucus
point.
ever? And how one photo taken by a customer made these dogs the hottest in town.
Are you corn dogs?
This is NBC Nightly News with
You
Lester
get it?
Holt.
Because it's like Yeah, I'll shut up.
Good evening and welcome. A widening conflict in the Middle East may be a reality tonight. The U.S. upping the ante against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, for the first time launching airstrikes inside Houthi-controlled parts of Yemen. American and British warplanes and missiles hitting what the Pentagon says were 60 Houthi targets across 16 locations in Yemen, including command and control facilities and munition storage.
Okay, so drone launch site, military base, several targets, whatever that means. The airport, another airport, or near the airport. What are y'all doing? Military base and another military base. So, according to the maps that I've seen, like, yeah, this is where the Houthi, like, mainly reside. However, what are you doing? Blowing up an airport and, like, I don't know, man. There is no such thing as ethical bombing. I guarantee you. I think that they killed 5 people and they injured another 4 or something like that.
According to the Houthis, 5 of their fighters were killed in the raid. In recent weeks, Houthi rebels in support of Hamas's war in Gaza have waged a series of attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea, threatening commerce in the vital waterway. Tonight, the Houthis warning the U.S.-led action will not go unanswered or unpunished. President Biden saying he will not hesitate to direct further measures. Courtney Cuby is at the Pentagon.
Lester, we have late-breaking news. The U.S. carrying out another strike against Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Today? Yeah. Okay. That's a good pause, by the way. This is the guy that said that he would not do any more wars, any more forever wars in the Middle East. What do you call this? Like, and not only this that's happening right now, but what has been happening since October. Because since and before October, really, there's been a lot going on. We have bases in the Middle East that have been constantly attacked. We have bases in Syria and Iraq, and they are being constantly attacked by opposing forces. You still have ISIS in the area. Not only that, you have Iranian-backed groups such as Hezbollah, such as Houthi, and there's also small pockets of groups within Syria and Iraq itself. Those guys that are in Syria and Iraq are constantly bombing or attacking the U.S. bases that are within that area, to the point that Iraq doesn't want the U.S. there anymore because of what's happening. Not only is that happening, not only is the United States being attacked, but the United States is doing the attacking as well, which they don't talk about. Nobody's talking about here in these stories about the Houthi, where the United States killed, I believe it was like a Hezbollah leader or somebody in that area. It might not have been Hezbollah of Lebanon, but like the Hezbollah of Iraq. And it happened, I believe it happened in Baghdad. So, like, you just got, like, the Wild West going on, and these people are just, like, trying to exist. And now that Iraq is somewhat stable, that you've beaten this ISIS back down to a minuscule portion of what they used to be. But, dude, like, you're endangering everyone, not only our own soldiers. You're also endangering the people that are just trying to live their lives there.
This time against a radar site, according to 2 U.S. defense officials. The strike conducted by a U.S. Navy ship, and now the U.S. waits to see if the Houthis respond.
So you're not doing any critical damage here. You're not doing anything that's disabling their capabilities.
After the Pentagon says a punishing series of U.S. and British strikes.
I know everybody wants to be like, yeehaw, partner, we're taking them out. Hell yeah, eat that, Houthis. Like, it's they're doing light strikes, basically.
Destroyed more than 60 Houthi military targets in Yemen, the first sign of retaliation. The Iranian-backed militia saying they won't stop attacking ships firing an anti-ship ballistic missile into the Red Sea, but hitting nothing. President Biden was pressed, what would he do if Houthi attacks don't stop?
We will make sure that we respond to the Houthis if they continue this outrageous behavior, along with our allies.
President Biden has been under pressure to act following months of
What does that
Houthi
mean?
attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea.
This
through
video
which
is
the
so good,
US
I've seen it
says
like 100 times.
15% of global sea trade travels, including oil supplies.
And by that,
Some
I don't
companies
mean
had
to
begun
say
avoiding
that
the
I
Red
think
Sea,
it's
a
good. I think
costly
like
disruption.
they did such a good
Last
job at
night's operation
propaganda.
included U.S. and British warplanes, British dropping bombs, and U.S. Navy ships, including a submarine, firing Tomahawk missiles. More than 150
What is
precision-guided
happening with
bombs
the
and
internet?
missiles in all. The White House says they demolished Houthi ballistic missile launchers, ammunition warehouses, air defense radars, and more.
The targets we chose were all valid, legitimate targets that went right at the Houthis' ability to store, to launch, and to guide.
President Biden writing, the strikes send a clear message that the United States and our partners will not tolerate attacks on our personnel or that imperil freedom of navigation. But tonight, Iran, who supplies the Houthis with money, weapons, and intelligence, condemned the strikes, saying they are fueling instability in the region.
That's what we love to do, actually.
I do.
Meanwhile, President Biden criticizing Defense Secretary
dude.
Lloyd Austin for keeping his hospitalization secret. Austin did not tell the president or the public for days that he was off the job and in intensive care for prostate cancer treatment.
Was it a option judgment for him not to tell you earlier?
Yes.
Courtney Cuby, NBC News, The Pentagon.
No let up to.
Bro, what is going on with my computer? Yeah, so Lloyd Austin's been holed up in a hospital ever since his trip to Israel for some reason. But yeah, they're saying that, you know, conspiracy theory, all that bullshit. I still think they slipped something in his drink. I don't know, man. Crazy shit happens. But yeah, you know, sure. Maybe he's not feeling well. And if it is, you know, a case of cancer and whatnot, treatments, I do hope that he feels better, and I hope that works out for him. But also, they're trying to allude that he's working from the hospital, which I don't know how that works for that high up ranking of U.S. government. But there are a lot of companies and a lot of industry will not allow you to work from the hospital, especially if you're laid up like that. That's a issue, but I guess, hey, you know, Secretary of Defense, you can do whatever you want.
Tonight, in the severe winter weather slamming the country all week, bomb cyclone conditions bringing whiteouts to the Midwest, along with dangerous cold and travel chaos nationwide. Maggie Vespa is caught in the middle of it in Chicago.
Tonight, the brewing bomb cyclone already living up to its name and derailing travel plans coast to coast.
How wild is it to see delays and cancellations stack up that quickly?
I was shocked. We boarded twice and we got on the plane, we got off.
Whiteout conditions slamming the Midwest, dumping up to
Dude,
2
you can't even
inches of
see
snow
where you're
per
going.
hour and coating planes
this
on this
the
Omaha runway in ice. In Chicago, the storm forcing a temporary ground stop at O'Hare, funneling frustrated passengers into long customer service lines. Effects rippled quickly. Tonight, more than 6,000 flights delayed, more than 2,000 canceled nationwide. Among the stressed out travelers,
So you're just stuck here.
I'm stuck here.
Shash Savaram, whose plane from Florida was diverted, making her miss her connection to India to see family.
How stressed are you right now?
Extremely. I was excited to go meet my mom.
60 million Americans tonight remain under new winter weather alerts, 125 million under wind alerts. Roads across the Midwest also a mess. Here, visibility in Kansas practically down to zero.
Dude, what are you
Wisconsin,
looking at?
meanwhile,
Yeah.
slammed with more than 10 inches of snow and counting.
2 snowstorms back to back feels like a little much.
I have never seen anything like this.
Is it the
The storm
boathouse?
now roaring east. New York's governor even urging Bills fans to avoid Sunday's playoff
started.
game against Pittsburgh.
We're anticipating at least 18 inches of snow. It's just better if you stay home and tune in on television. It'll be safer for all of us.
A plea for safety amid
Told you where to
America's
stay.
third severe winter system this week.
And Maggie joining us live from O'Hare. Maggie, how's the travel looking ahead into the weekend?
Yeah, so Lester, long story short, this whole mess could take a few days to work itself out. And in the meantime, with this storm still on the move, the FAA is on alert, saying they're working with airlines to monitor this storm's impact on flights through the weekend. Lester.
All right, Maggie, thank you. The snow and bitter cold and high winds will stay bad through the weekend. Bill Cairns is here, and that radar is pretty concerning.
Yeah, good evening, Lester. Travel is difficult, almost impossible in Iowa, Wisconsin, and spreading quickly into areas of Michigan. We've also going to be watching an additional maybe 3 to 6 inches in areas of Wisconsin and Michigan higher than that. The official forecast for that Buffalo Bills game, 40 to 60 mile per hour winds, single-digit temperatures, and 1 to 2 feet of snow blowing all over the place. That is going to be interesting to watch. As far as the East goes, the heavy rain is moving in. Many rivers are still flooded. And so we're going to add 1 to 2 inches tonight. And my friends in Maine, get ready for a record-breaking high tide tomorrow with a storm surge. And then in the Midwest, we've already had wind chills all day today in the negative 40-degree range. As we go throughout this next 3 days, it just settles right in. That Kansas City Chiefs football game, negative 20 degrees, and all eyes on Texas.
Negative 20 degrees
They're predicting record
during the game?
Tuesday of next week.
All right, Bill Cairns, thank you. In Iowa tonight, the bitter cold impacting the candidates in a heated race for Republican support just 3 days before the caucuses. Garrett Hake is there tonight.
Tonight, the final sprint towards Monday's Iowa caucus, frozen by the blizzard sweeping across the Hawkeye state. Ron DeSantis.
Okay, hold on. I'll get back to Ron DeSanctimonious here in a second. But yeah, this is what I was saying yesterday. So reality is too hard for some people, and some people would rather destroy everything around them rather than admit they were wrong. We need much more mental health therapy available for everyone. That's exactly what I was getting to. Yes, 100%. 100%. Exactly what I was trying to get to. But also, there are reasons people end up feeling this way. Yes, I agree. There is a mental health issue in the United States, but also what causes the mental health issues, instability in life, the inability to either connect with people or to have a stable job or to have a well-paying job, which leads to not having a stable life. The inability to land well-paying jobs, to end up working for minimum wage, and all of those things that are all interconnected. So that's really what I'm trying to get to. But yeah, I'll agree with that. I don't know. Anyways, back to high heels over here.
And Nikki Haley urging supporters to turn out Monday, no matter the record cold caucus forecast.
I don't think you'll ever be able to cast a vote that has more impact.
It's going to be negative 15, but I'm going to be out there.
DeSantis and Haley still seen in a race for second to frontrunner Donald Trump, who holds a key advantage.
Raise your hand if you're going to caucus for Donald Trump. All three of you.
The most recent NBC News Des Moines Register poll shows 63% of first-time caucus goers, often new to politics or new to Iowa, plan to support the former president.
I look at everybody, but he's my only choice.
Trump's ability to recruit first-time caucus goers like Leroy Schnothorst and turn them into active volunteers, key to his strength here.
I just want to support Trump because he's...
Caucus goers, often new to politics or new to Iowa, plan to support the former president.
I look at everybody, but he's my only choice.
Trump's ability to recruit first-time caucus goers like Leroy Schnothorst and turn them into active volunteers, key to his strength here.
I just want to support Trump because he's putting America first, and that's the biggest reason why I'm out here.
But Trump isn't alone in drawing new caucus goers. Ryan Clares voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Now he's crossing over to caucus for Nikki Haley.
I feel like there needs to be a new generation that comes in the White House. It can't be Trump or Biden.
Tonight, the snow and treacherous conditions causing every campaign to cancel some events, something that could make it that much harder for Mr. Trump's competitors to shake up this race with just 3 days to go. Lester?
All right, Garrett, thanks for braving it in the snow. The FAA says it is increasing oversight of production at Boeing after that decompression explosion on a MAX 9 plane last week. It also is investigating whether...
I'm sorry, FAA, what authority do you have? You mean you could just do whatever you want to my beautiful Boeing over here and, you know, hold up the flights? We have money to make. Thank you.
Boeing failed to deliver safe planes as required by law. Here's Tom Costello.
It was a week ago tonight that the door plug on that Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 blew out over Portland. Today, the FAA suggested that accident raises serious concerns about Boeing's safety culture, announcing its increasing oversight of production and manufacturing at Boeing and its suppliers, including Spirit Aerosystems, which manufactured the fuselage with the suspect door plug already installed.
This is a brand new aircraft. It has just come off the line and it had significant problems. And we believe there are other manufacturing problems as well.
The FAA chief announcing an audit of the MAX 9 production line to ensure Boeing's compliance with quality procedures, increased monitoring of any in-flight events, and assessing whether a third party should oversee Boeing quality control, rather than Boeing employees acting as FAA inspectors as Congress has mandated. Today, Boeing says it supports all actions that strengthen quality and safety, and we are taking actions across our production system.
None of the Dash 9s will fly with an unsafe condition. That I can promise.
Meanwhile, several passengers are suing Boeing, claiming physical and emotional injuries from last week's accident. With Alaska and United's MAX 9 still grounded.
What PTSD are you not going to have after that?
They will not be rushed into service.
We're going to go with it when it's safe.
Meanwhile, the door plug involved in that explosion is now at the NTSB lab in Washington and will undergo analysis this weekend. Lester?
All right, Tom, thank
in the Palestinian West Bank, where locals accuse Israel of heavy-handed
explosion is now at the NTSB lab in Washington and will undergo analysis this weekend. Lester?
All right, Tom, thank you. In a first for the Biden Justice Department, federal prosecutors in Buffalo, New York say they will seek the death penalty against the man who killed 10 black shoppers and staff at a top supermarket in 2022. Peyton Gendron faces federal hate crime charges.
Yeah, no, I saw that basically snuff video. He gets his GoPro going, he steps out of his car and instantly just plop, like two or three people in the parking lot, goes inside the store, or walks up to the door. I think it's a security guard that had a gun on him. Security guard didn't even have a chance. He was gone. And then he walks inside and just starts shooting at people. And I think shortly after that, the cops showed up. They must have been not far away. It really puts into perspective of how quickly and how easily these guys get away with what they do. Because you have an assault rifle that the aim on it is extremely easy, and not only that, the amount of bullets that it can hold it's a weapon of war. That is what it's intended for. It isn't intended for really much else. Sure, you can say, oh, we're going to use it for hunting. You shoot a deer properly, you've downed it. It's not going anywhere. You don't need something like that. I believe something similar was used in the Allen Premium Outlet shooting, where that shooter instantly was able to kill about 4 or 5 people, something like that, right away, before the mall police was able to get him. But this guy, I guess he waited for the cops to show up. I think that's what happened. And like I said, they showed up pretty quickly, and then they just took him in.
and
As
is
if he was
already
just
serving
coming
life
out of the
without
store,
parole
buying a
after
Coke or
pleading
something.
guilty to state murder charges. Israel said tonight a deal has been reached to allow medicine to be delivered in the next few days to the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza.
Always in these stories. Always in these stories.
Unrest in the Israeli
they will mention Israel first, and then they will mention Hamas to get that connection, right? So you have to in your brain you have to get the connection that Hamas and then Palestinians last. So even if there was like 1,000 people that were killed on that day, you still have to make sure that you mention that there are hostages that Hamas is holding, and then you can talk about the Palestinians.
Occupied West Bank. Richard Engel reports, and a warning, some of the images in this report are disturbing.
Already at war with Hamas in Gaza and under threat from Iranian-backed militias across the Middle East, Israel may face a new front closer to home. Since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, Israeli troops have intensified counterterrorism raids in the Palestinian West Bank, where locals accuse Israel of heavy-handed tactics. We recently traveled to the Nur Shams refugee camp. Suleiman al-Zuhairi, a community leader.
They've always had heavy-handed attempts here in the West Bank. That is their strategy. If you don't know what that is, it's the Smotrich doctrine. SMO, what is it? TRICH, Smotrich, named after the. I probably misspelled that actually. Now I'm thinking about it. It's late, man. But named after the guy that's overseeing the West Bank these days, and his goal is to get as many settlers in place so that you can basically thin out the herd of the Palestinian people that are living there right now. And so instead of it being a full West Bank of Palestinians, I believe it's something like 2 million, 2 or 3 million that live there. You'll have instead pockets of Palestinians, because what they do is they segregate the roads, they segregate the areas, they segregate the streets that they can walk on, and they give those to the settlers. And then they say, hey, you Palestinians, you can only walk on these streets, you can only drive on these streets, and if you fuck up, you better watch your ass.
Took me to a building where he says Israeli troops arrested a man accused of making bombs and then blew up 3 apartments.
This is what we call it collective punishment for the people.
Collective punishment, exactly.
Down the street lives Sarah Mahamid. She showed me the spot where she filmed her 16-year-old brother as he was shot by Israeli soldiers during another raid. Her cell phone video is difficult to watch. When her brother, on the left, looks around a corner, he's shot dead. When her father tries to recover the body, he's shot too. Seriously injured, he manages to limp back home. Our blood is cheap for them. They're killing us every day, Sarah says. The Israeli military said its troops fired on terrorists during an operation in the area at the time. We attended the funeral for Palestinians who've just been killed during another Israeli operation.
This funeral is for 3 people, but scenes like this are happening now all across the West Bank. Opinion polls suggest that the popularity of militant groups has skyrocketed since October 7th.
Yeah.
One opinion poll said that their popularity has increased by 90%.
90%.
Officials say more than 330 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 7th.
UN and Arab diplomats.
90%. So if that doesn't prove that the solution of escalation is not a solution, then I don't know what does. Because you can't continue to behave this way and expect people to fall in line. Now, if you want to say, hey, they should be falling in line, they should be following directions, they should be just complying. How well did that work out for police in the United States? It doesn't. It doesn't work out. Like we're coming across a time where we have to reevaluate what we've been doing, and this is the same case. Like you cannot continue to escalate. Ads rolled. That's nice. I forgot I turned on ads, I guess. I don't know, maybe they turned themselves on. Weird times. Alright, I'll just play
Have warned the West Bank is at a boiling point. Lester?
Richard Engel, thank you. We'll take a break now. In 60 seconds, the dangerous flu season on top of more COVID infections, how to protect yourself and your family, and what doctors say you should know about fevers. Stay with us. If it seems like everyone you know has been sick lately, it may have a lot to do with the rise in both flu and COVID cases this season.
Yeah, you
Stephanie
think?
Goss now on the major concern.
All right, gonna skip
It's
that.
hard to believe. It's too fast. It's too sudden.
His distraught father, Robert, telling us Quentin was unvaccinated.
Are you going to go get vaccinated now?
Yeah, I'll probably say man. Definitely am. I've got grandbabies around.
Buddy.
I love it. They go solid.
Vaccines remain the best defense, according to doctors.
I don't know what happened, man.
They really are
But it seems
the
like a lot.
optimal way and the sort of foundation of all of the efforts that we recommend to prevent the transmission.
Yeah, definitely, get your shot, whatnot. Taiwan, high stakes. All right, you know what? I'm just going to skip the second thought because this PC is just going. It's driving me crazy. It has not been doing this. Like the bit rate's fine. It's just YouTube. It's just the YouTube website.
This episode and others like it are brought to you by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. Get some cool perks and help support the show by becoming a patron at Patreon.
Maybe if I close it and open it back up or something. There we go. Did that work? No? Okay. Well, whatever. I tried. Jesus Christ, man.
Patron at patreon.com/secondthought. I also recently launched a new channel dedicated to the nuts and bolts of making a living as a creative. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can check it out at the link below.
Wow. Okay.
And I've been asked directly, would you do it again?
Dude.
If you give me the same circumstances, I would not hesitate.
Sorry, what? I'm sorry, what are we doing here?
According to Doctors Without Borders, its hospital in northern Afghanistan came under repeated direct attack on Saturday from a U.S. AC-130 gunship.
When a mistake occurs, the United States owns up to it, and we vow to get to the bottom of what exactly happened.
Tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably.
That's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress, help us build a world that is safer, more peaceful, more prosperous for our children and grandchildren.
Are we the baddies?
Honestly, I could just leave it at that.
Oh no,
not great.
Too much.
Okay, friends, today we're going to tackle a big topic, and one that might make my fellow Americans a little uncomfortable if you haven't grappled with this stuff before. Before we begin, I'd like to offer a quick disclaimer, because I know I'm going to get a ton of misguided comments. I am not anti-American in the sense that most self-professed patriots
Why you hate America?
I love the land, I love my neighbors, and as a Texan, you better believe I love Whataburger. I am anti-American in the sense that I do not support the United States as a political project. A nation founded on genocide, theft, and slavery has no right to exist, and certainly has no right to act as an occupying force all over the world, dictate trade agreements, fund proxy wars and death squads, foment coups, and generally act as a barrier to self-determination and genuine freedom. When people say things like, "You're not patriotic," I find it a little disingenuous, because what could be more patriotic?
Oh shit, I hit the wrong button. Jesus Christ, man. I swear to God.
Patron at patreon.com/secondthought. I also recently launched a new channel dedicated to the...
Get it, dude. You wear short shorts. That's cool, man. I mean, do your thing. It's loading a little faster. I closed some stuff, but, like, I don't know what else I need to close. I don't know what else I can close.
Foment coups, and generally act as a barrier to self-determination and genuine freedom. When people say things like, "You're not patriotic," I find it a little disingenuous, because what could be more patriotic than recognizing your country's flaws and working to build a better society?
Right.
Anyway, this is a massive topic. There's no way I can even mention all the crimes the US has committed, so I'm going to leave a bunch of resources in the description if you'd like to learn more. Originally, I was going to keep this nice and organized and have a few categories with one major example each, but there were just too many to pick from, so let's just dive in and take a brief stroll through the history of the US empire. We'll start at the beginning, with the genocide of the Native Americans. When Europeans first laid eyes on what they called the New World, it's estimated there were around 15 million indigenous people living in North America. By the end of the 19th century, there were just 200,000. 14.8 million people were killed by these foreign invaders who, without any sense of self-awareness, considered the native population savages. Perhaps the most infamous period of the genocide is known today as the Trail of Tears, which lasted from 1830 to 1840. This project, initiated by President Andrew Jackson, a war criminal and slavery enthusiast, and approved by the United States Congress, had the explicit goal of removing Native Americans from the land the U.S. was currently colonizing, and relocating them across the Mississippi. The problem was, most of these people didn't want to leave their homes. So, naturally, the U.S. butchered as many as it took until the native population complied. The actual relocation process was incredibly dangerous, and thousands of people died of disease, starvation, or exposure to the elements. Of course, that was of no consequence to the US government. They had achieved their goal: vast new swaths of land to colonize and turn into farmland to be worked by an army of slaves. This is just one short 10-year period in the history of the genocide of Native Americans, but it's indicative of the cruelty and calculated inhumanity that underpins the American project. Find land or resources you want, kill the locals, and maximize profits by making use of slave labor. I've left a number of books on this genocide in the description, and I highly recommend my American viewers take a look. What we're taught in school does not reflect the magnitude of the crimes our country committed. Early Americans participated in the eradication of the bison specifically to starve the indigenous peoples. They attacked villages and butchered men, women, and children to universal praise. They did everything they could to make the native people who were just trying to exist. I recommend my American viewers take a look. What we're taught in school does not reflect the magnitude of the crimes our country committed. Early Americans participated in the eradication of the bison specifically to starve the indigenous peoples. They attacked villages.
So, one thing that I feel like gets left out of this whole indigenous population thing in the United States is, you know, you show up and you're like, oh man, look at all this land, there's nobody here. Hey, doofus, they like, a lot of the tribes were nomadic, as in the reason they were nomadic and the reason that they moved around so much was to let the land thrive and rebuild itself, which is what we do not do anymore here in the United States. We definitely don't allow the land to rebuild itself. We plot down a house. We pave over roads, pave over dirt. We plow down trees. We do all this kind of shit that is negative. It has a major negative effect to the land that's been there. And then we put down grass that's not native to the United States, that's not native to Texas, that's not native to whatever state you're living in, which is all plants can be considered a weed if you want them to be considered a weed. Grass itself is technically a weed, and it's really one of the worst ones because it doesn't give room for other things to grow. If you've noticed, anywhere something else is growing, grass usually doesn't grow. It's a major issue. It is a major issue, especially if you want to attract the natural insects, natural vegetation, natural life that is just occurring within that environment. So if you put grass down and where trees used to be, guess what? You're not going to have any fucking birds. You're not going to have any bees. You're not going to have like spiders or whatever the ecosystem requires is not going to be able to thrive in that. Because grass, as we know, provides no shade for anything. It burns easily if it's dried out. And it dies in the winter. Like, we came to this realization of, oh shit, maybe doing things that as the king did them back in England is not the greatest idea.
Villages and butchered men, women, and children to universal praise. They did.
And that was the other thing. Not only did the settlers in the United States do that, but also you had conquistadors previous to that, and then also in different parts of the Americas. So, the spread of Catholicism, and there's a reason that a lot of us speak Spanish, by the way, and are Catholic.
Did everything they could to make the native people who were just trying to exist seem like evil monsters bent on destroying the American project. There's a reason Hitler had such admiration for this period in American history, but...
That's an excellent alluding to how Hitler was basically inspired on a lot of his policies. He learned it by watching us.
We'll get to that later. For now, let's move on to some good old-fashioned war crimes.
Ooh, war crimes.
The United States is an exceptionally warlike nation. In the 247 years since its inception, the U.S. has been at war for all but 17 of them. The country sees itself as the world police, the shining city on a hill that has the moral responsibility to enforce our conception of society on everyone else. This country talks a big game about the importance of freedom and the right to self-determination. But the United States has never once embodied those values. One early example is the Philippine-American War.
So, the Philippine-American War, I know he's going to say that, like, we went and took over the Philippines. What happened right before that, though? 1899. Hold on. When did the Philippines run out the Spanish? 1898. Spanish rule ended in 1898. So, the Filipinos themselves ran out the Spaniards in 1898, and then directly after that, we were like, hey, you belong to us. Like,
at the end of the Spanish-American War.
What kind of bullshit is that? Also, if the history books serve me properly, there was no credit given to the Filipinos that they were the ones that ran out the Spaniards. Instead, I believe the way that it's written is that the U.S. came in to back up the Filipinos and help get rid of the Spaniards in the area.
Or the United States annexed the Philippines. The island nation didn't want that and declared independence.
Of course, why would you want that? Like, if somebody comes in to help you, and then they don't leave, they're not helping you.
The United States, a country halfway around the world, said too bad. By the U.S. State Department's own admission, the resulting war killed some 20,000 Filipino combatants and over 200,000 civilians, with some estimates going as high as 1 million people. The U.S. military was brutal, engaging in scorched earth tactics and forcing tens of thousands into concentration camps where thousands of civilians died in unspeakable conditions. Once again, all this because the U.S. saw something it wanted and chose not to recognize the rights and desires of the people who lived there.
Yeah, we seem to have a
Let's
trend
fast
on
forward
doing
a little
that.
bit. Less than 50 years after the massacre in the Philippines, another island nation was ready to surrender to the Allied powers. At the very end of World War II, Japan was thoroughly beaten.
You know, one thing that he skips over, like, in that time, is Hawaii. Hawaii was basically strong-armed into becoming a state. Also, when Pearl Harbor happened, Hawaii was not a state.
But even though the Allies were just beginning to celebrate victory, the United States had already set its sights on a new geopolitical and economic rival. The Soviet Union had grown from a pre-industrial backwater to the second most powerful nation on Earth in less than 50 years, and the US didn't want them to get any ideas. So on the 6th and 9th of August 1945, the United States dropped nuclear bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, vaporizing over 200,000 civilians. There are those who attempt to justify the bombing, saying that it saved countless lives by ending the war. But this is misguided at best and an outright lie at worst. Japan was ready to surrender. This is an established fact. But perhaps more damning than that is the fact that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were chosen not because they were military targets, but because they were population centers. And what better way to scare a geopolitical rival than to say, we're willing to kill this many civilians in an instant to get what we want? The United States remains the only nation on Earth to have used nuclear weapons against other human beings. And we did it twice, on civilians, on purpose.
Hey,
Continuing along the bloody path of US history, we get to the Cold War, a period of about 50 years where the US, desperate to maintain its newfound post-war dominance, really ramped up their imperialist tendencies. According to a report by the New York Times, the United States launched at least 81 overt or covert interventions between 1946 and 2000. Latin America was of particular interest, and saw regime change projects in Nicaragua, Honduras, Panama, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. Then you had the 1953 CIA-backed coup in Iran, which deposed the left-leaning Democrat...
Okay, so that actually...
Then you had the 1953 CIA...
There is a documentary called Coup 53, which you can't find anywhere right now. Huh. Very peculiar there.
CIA-backed coup in Iran, which deposed the left-leaning, democratically elected President Mossadegh and reinstalled the despotic Shah.
And so that guy wanted to nationalize Iran's oil fields, which always seems to be the downfall of a lot of elected leaders in the world around that time. Gee, I wonder what happened to them, because, you know, they got democratically elected, and then they were like, we're going to nationalize our whatever our biggest export is and keep it in-house instead. And then, you know, somehow they die.
Of Iran. As we'll see shortly, the CIA becomes especially vital to US meddling in this period. Another one of their pet projects was trying to assassinate Fidel Castro, the revolutionary leader of Cuba. They made at least 668 attempts to eliminate the beloved leader, trying everything from poison to gunmen to Looney Tunes-style exploding cigars. Despite the CIA's best efforts, Castro lived a long, healthy life, finally passing away in 2016. For anyone unfamiliar with the story of the Cuban Revolution and their efforts at resisting US imperialism, I highly recommend you check out Season 2 of Blowback. It's a fantastic podcast. Perhaps the most infamous US intervention of the era was the 1973 coup in Chile. In early September 1970, the people of Chile elected the democratic socialist Salvador Allende as president. Allende was by all accounts a good man. He recognized what life was like for the masses, and enacted sweeping reforms to raise the standard of living for average Chileans. This included nationalizing some of their industry, particularly in mining. The United States and the late Henry Kissinger didn't like that. A few months before the election, he had said, quote, "I don't see why we need to stand idly by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its own people." This was the empire's philosophy in a nutshell. The United States has the right to interfere wherever it wants to secure its interests. And that's just what they did in Chile. Not even a week after Allende was elected, Kissinger had concocted a plan with the CIA to destabilize and overthrow the Chilean government. On September 11th, 1973, the presidential palace was bombed, seized, and after delivering a brief speech full of hope for the future of Chile, Allende took his own life rather than be captured. Here's what he said: "Workers of my country, I have faith in Chile and its destiny. Other men will overcome this dark and bitter moment when treason seeks to prevail. Go forward knowing that sooner rather than later, the great avenues will open again and free men will walk through them to construct a better society. Long live Chile, long live the people, long live the workers." The fascist general Augusto Pinochet, backed by the US government, assumed control of the country, imprisoning, torturing, disappearing, and murdering tens of thousands of Chileans. This reign of terror would go on.
When he says disappearing, he doesn't mean that Pinochet disappeared. He means that people just disappeared. Which also I heard like 2 soldiers in the Red Sea have disappeared for some reason.
For 17 years.
Not related.
But the outright violence was only part of the master plan.
17 years,
Shortly
man.
after the coup, Pinochet invited none other than Milton Friedman, along with a bunch of Chicago school lackeys, to devise a new economic agenda for the country. And so Chile became the guinea pig for laissez-faire, libertarian free market policy, leading inevitably to
So they invited the Chicago boys to go help them like rebuild their government and redirect how things should be going, and it was an utter failure. It was a complete failure.
Economic collapse in 1982.
There you
But
go.
sometimes rigging elections and deposing democratically elected leaders just isn't enough. Sometimes the US decides to secure its interest by fighting, funding, or otherwise enabling devastating proxy wars. As with the aforementioned interventions, the Cold War was the primary factor driving US involvement in places like Vietnam and Korea. We were desperate not to let communism be seen as a viable economic alternative to capitalism, and it was starting to catch on. So the US did what it does best: butcher civilians in the name of maintaining its dominance. US activity in Vietnam cost some 365,000 civilian lives.
Fucking shit.
Massacres, the burning of entire villages, indiscriminate bombing, the use of napalm, white phosphorus, and millions of gallons of chemical weapons that to this day...
White phosphorus will melt your skin off and your flesh as well. It's horrible. I don't know if he's going to mention Blowback here, but Blowback, the podcast, was very good as far as describing what happened there. Not Vietnam, but they went over the Korean War, and they went over the effects of napalm, and there was a part where they talked about one of the guys that, or one of the troops that was accidentally friendly fired by napalm, and basically his men were rolling around in the snow begging their captain to kill him because of the napalm. This is not a good time.
It caused birth defects.
You can say like, hey, this is war, but it's completely unethical. There's no justifying those actions.
Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. In Korea, what's often referred to as the Forgotten War here in the United States,
there it is.
The US killed between 2 and 3 million civilians. The North lost a full 20% of its population.
Jesus.
So it shouldn't come as a surprise that Korea is the Forgotten War. It's not that we've forgotten, it's that our government doesn't like to remind us that they slaughtered millions of people just so capitalism wouldn't have to contend with an economic challenger. If you'd like to learn more about the Korean War, check out Blowback Season 4. And these are just two of the more well-known proxy conflicts during the Cold War.
That is one of my favorite podcasts. I highly recommend checking out.
And they remain a favorite tool of the U.S. empire to this day.
Like, the first episode of Blowback is the guy from Bob's Burgers pretending that he's like Saddam Hussein.
But we can't talk about war crimes and civilian casualties without talking about the Iraq War. Today, 20 years after the start of the so-called War on Terror, it's no longer controversial to say that the Iraq War was started based on a lie. This is a well-established fact. Anyone who tries to say otherwise is either in complete denial or is acting in bad faith. For the younger viewers in the audience, the United States made a big show of saying they had proof Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. They did not. And so, based on false testimonies that served the interests of empire, the United States invaded Iraq and occupied it for years. What was once a vibrant, thriving nation was obliterated in what were called shock and awe campaigns. The US military targeted communications, electricity, vital infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and water treatment facilities. Anything they could do to inflict maximum suffering. Over the course of the war, the US killed at least 1 million Iraqis. But beyond the evil of starting the war under false pretenses was the even more unspeakable evil of Abu Ghraib. This secret prison was operated by US personnel who engaged in torture, sexual assault, and other war crimes. I can't even show the unblurred images here, but I'm sure you recognize some of them just from the silhouette.
So there's a technique that they used in Abu Ghraib called the Palestinian chair, which, if you've never heard of that before, again, just look it up. The Palestinian chair. It is not something you can buy. It is definitely something you can experience. It was something that was taught to the soldiers in that area by a particular group. Now, they probably won't admit to that, but when you call something the Palestinian chair, you have to wonder, where does this technique come from, who came up with it, and why is it called that? So, yeah, that was a popular torture technique that they used there.
That's how infamous this prison was. As with everything else in this video, there are links in the description to learn more. And of course, Blowback has a season on the Iraq War as well.
Yeah.
Heck, at this point I've mentioned almost every season. Just go listen to all of them. They're great. Before this video gets too long, it's important we also address one of the crimes the US is currently committing. Over the last few months, the Israeli occupation has drastically ramped up its genocide of the Palestinian people, using a surprise attack by the Palestinian resistance as justification. To be clear, this violence did not start on October 7th. The Palestinian people have been subjected to brutal colonial cruelty for the past 75 years. It's not a complex issue.
Quite a long time.
If you don't feel confident enough to take a position yet, that's perfectly fine. I would just ask that you educate yourself on the subject, because this is one of those issues where people decades from now will look back and say, how did decent people watch this happen and do nothing? I'd recommend you start with Ilan Pappé's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. He's an Israeli historian, so there can't be any accusations of pro-Palestinian bias there. Just be warned, it's a harrowing read. So, how does the US fit into this?
Sounds interesting.
Well, Israel is a client state of the US. It serves as a vital geopolitical foothold in the region. That's literally the only reason the US cares about Israel, regardless of how elected officials try to sell it. Don't believe me? Here's current President Joe Biden back in 1986.
There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
The US provides Israel with funding, weapons, ammunition, equipment for their missile defense system, and most importantly, unconditional support for their genocidal project. Elected officials are very nearly unanimous in their defense of the apartheid regime, including one-time progressive champion Bernie Sanders. U.S. media uncritically repeats Israeli propaganda 24/7, despite all of it being debunked, including by intergovernmental bodies like the UN and humanitarian groups like Doctors Without Borders. Just a few weeks ago, the UN voted on a resolution to demand an immediate ceasefire. Of the 193 member states, only 10 voted against the resolution. Among them, the United States. Many people, myself included, believe that this unconscionable backing of the most explicit genocide in modern history will be the nail in the coffin of U.S. legitimacy abroad. No country on earth beyond our Western European vassals will ever again believe a word the U.S. says about freedom, democracy, human rights, or self-determination. The only difference between the United States and Israel is that the genocide of Native Americans was almost absolute, and Israel hasn't achieved that goal yet. There's a reason Hitler spoke so highly of U.S. colonization efforts. It was complete extermination. And I guarantee you the same arguments we're hearing today from defenders of the Israeli genocide of Palestinians were used to justify the atrocities committed in North America. Just about everyone agrees that what the European colonizers did to the Native Americans was wrong. And now, a couple hundred years later, we're doing land acknowledgments and pretending it was always unanimous.
You know, there's something
about everyone agrees that what.
No, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
The European colonizers did to the Native Americans was wrong.
There is a reason that those illustrations and the historically accurate depictions are 13. It is in order of the 12 apostles and the Redeemer.
And now, a couple hundred years later, we're doing land acknowledgments and pretending it was always unanimous that the genocide was bad. The same thing is happening with the genocide in Palestine. As with everything else, I've left a bunch of resources on this issue in the description. Well, that was grim. It's always hard making these videos because there's so much to say, and I have statistics on how long the
bringing me down, bro.
I didn't even mention the CIA's domestic operations, or Operation Paperclip, or the embargo on Cuba, or the UN resolutions that show the U.S.
So Paperclip is where we brought the Nazi scientists over to win the space race against Russia. UN resolutions.
The sole vote against classifying food as a human right, or any number of other things. The bottom line is this. There is a reality that we are not exposed to here in the United States. There's a reason the majority of the world hates us. Not us specifically, but the nation, the flag on the invader's uniform. The United States is the single greatest barrier to progress in the world, bar none. This country is responsible for some of the most reprehensible crimes against humanity the world has ever seen.
Can it be better, JT?
But it says right here in my history book that the good guys won every war. Maybe it's time to think about who writes the history books, and what interests benefit from the American people remaining uneducated.
You know, I've said this personally before, but as a Mexican American, you know, you are taught that, you know, remember the Alamo. It was a good thing. You know, the Alamo. We won the Alamo. We won the war. And it's like, okay, you know, as you're teaching this to a group of children, in like probably 6th grade, I think it was, that we were being taught it. I would say like a 95% Mexican background school in Houston, and you know, we're all English-speaking kids, first generation, most of us, if not you know, immigrants themselves. And you get taught that, hey, you know, the Alamo happened. All of these guys came in from like Tennessee and, you know, surrounding states to back up the Alamo, and you know, they all died and they sacrificed for us. And it's like, what they don't really mention a lot is the invaders were Mexicans, right? that were trying to take back the territory of Mexico, because Texas used to belong to Mexico. That was the entire thing. And, you know, you kind of do get to that. We got to that in history class. And, you know, once our history teacher was like, yeah, so like we fought off the Mexicans, and we lost the Alamo, but at the end of the day, you know, we won the state. And it's like, one kid was like, hey, well, you know, we're Mexican. Like, what does that mean? And, like, the teacher couldn't explain the contradictions in the story of teaching this story to a group of Mexican kids. It was a really weird time. It's really weird. So when somebody says, remember the Alamo, as an American, as a Mexican American, what does that mean? Does that mean that, like, I should praise the efforts from non-Mexican Americans? Or should I remember that, hey, Mexico kind of kicked everybody's ass when it came to the Alamo?
And blindly patriotic. You and I may be good people, but as the United States of America,
never be blindly patriotic for anything.
Yeah, we're the bad guys.
He said the thing.
Hey there. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I recently launched a new channel. It's hard to believe, but for the past 10 years now, I've made my living as a creative professional. Over that time, I've picked up a lot of useful tips and tricks.
Good for you, sir. I am very happy that you're doing that thing. It seems like my YouTube is working accurately. Let me go back here. And I think there was another video that I want to watch. Ooh. Oh, God. I'll just do the rest of the news, I guess. Oh. What was that?
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United States and Britain have launched dozens of strikes from the air and sea targeting Yemen in a move many fear could trigger a broader regional war. At least 5 people were killed. The strikes targeted areas in Yemen controlled by Houthi forces who've been attacking Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea to protest Israel's bombardment of Gaza. So far, the Houthis have not killed anyone aboard the ships, but the group's actions have disrupted a key global trade route. In a statement, President Biden said, quote, these targeted strikes are a clear message that the United States and our partners will not tolerate attacks on our personnel or allow hostile actors to imperil freedom of navigation, unquote. President Biden's the 4th U.S. president in a row to bomb Yemen. Houthi officials have vowed to retaliate against the strikes and continue targeting Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea until a ceasefire in Gaza is declared.
We say to all countries, to Asian countries like China and others, we say to European countries in the West, we say to everyone in the world, there is no problem for you to transverse and pass through the Red Sea. The only targets exclusively are ships linked to Israel.
The Houthis, who control parts of Yemen, are seen as a member of the Iranian-backed Axis of Resistance, a loose-knit group of forces in the region that also include Hamas and Hezbollah. Meanwhile, in Washington, President Biden's facing pushback from some lawmakers for bombing Yemen without congressional approval. In a message on social media, Congressmember Rashida Tlaib said the president's violate.
Okay, why does it feel like this is a lot more informative than whatever the bullshit was that NBC was showing earlier?
Article 1 of the Constitution. She went on to say, quote, the American people are tired of endless war.
Yep.
At the International Court of Justice in The Hague, Israel rejected claims by South Africa that it's committing genocide against Palestinians. On Thursday, South Africa demanded an emergency suspension of Israel's aerial and ground assault on Gaza, which it said was intended to bring about, quote, the destruction of the population of the territory. Earlier today in court, Israel accused South Africa of distorting the situation in Gaza.
If there have been acts that may be characterized as genocidal, then they have been perpetrated against Israel. If there is a concern about the obligations of states under the Genocide Convention, then it is in relation to their responsibilities to act against Hamas's proudly declared agenda of annihilation.
On Thursday, pro-Palestinian rallies were held in South Africa as the ICJ began hearings. Many South Africans praised the government for supporting the people of Gaza.
South Africa is very brave to have done what it's done, and I'm hoping that this does not work against us as a country, but really it works to ensure that Palestine, the people of Palestine, get the justice that they deserve.
In more news on Gaza, the NGO Save the Children says more than 10,000 Palestinian children have been killed by Israel's assault. That's 1% of the total child population in Gaza. At least 1,000 children have lost one or both limbs. This comes as doctors warn conditions inside Gaza's remaining...
I'm sorry, what? What did you just say?
Limbs. This comes as doctors warn conditions inside Gaza's remaining hospitals continue to deteriorate amidst Israeli attacks and dwindling supplies.
Today, the area around Al-Aqsa was hit. All ambulances were destroyed. We even started to run out of medical supplies, and sadly we have cases we can't do anything about. We have nothing to offer, so we feel completely helpless. This is very sad and bad, to be honest. We hope that any side will be able to at least ensure the ability for the medical staff to work.
The Intercept has obtained documents suggesting the U.S. Air Force sent officers to Israel in November to help provide intelligence, including satellite data, to help Israel pick targets to bomb in Gaza. The document from November 21st references the deployment of an air defense liaison team to Israel. Craig McIver, a former UN official who resigned over the war in Gaza, said the Intercept's report is, quote, more evidence of U.S. complicity in genocide.
Wow.
Here in New York, Donald Trump's $370 million civil fraud trial wrapped up Thursday with Trump insulting the judge overseeing the case and accusing New York Attorney General Letitia James of persecuting him, saying she should pay him for what he called a political witch hunt. As the extraordinary courtroom scene unfolded, Judge Arthur Engoron, who had denied Trump's request to deliver his own closing statement, instructed his lawyer to, quote, control your client. Attorney General James spoke to reporters outside the courthouse.
What a dumbass.
This is our last day in our case against Donald Trump for persistent and repeated fraud, illegality. This case has never been about politics or personal vendetta or about name-calling. This case is about the facts and the law. And Mr. Donald Trump violated the law. And as you know, the judges already found that he, in fact, violated the law for repeated fraud over a period of years.
In Ohio, a grand jury has refused to indict a woman who was charged with felony abuse of a corpse after having a miscarriage at home. 34-year-old Brittany Watts was then treated in the hospital where a nurse called the police after Watts said she had to dispose of the contents of her miscarriage. She was criminally...
Like, in the United States, you cannot trust your own fucking doctor. You can't trust your own, like, your own physicians. The people that you are supposed to trust. You can't trust them to be on your side on these things. Like, it just, I don't know, man. Like, a lot of these things are just blowing my mind of the way that we're behaving. Because we're not behaving like rational people.
Criminally charged 2 weeks later. She'd been refused abortion care prior to her miscarriage. Brittany Watts spoke to supporters at a rally Thursday.
I want to thank my community, Warren, Ohio. I was born here, I was raised here, I graduated high school here, and I'm going to continue to stay here because I have to continue to fight.
The Abortion Fund for Ohio said, quote, "We're grateful for today's decision, but remain livid at the circumstances that brought us here. Ohioans, especially Black women, fear for their lives and freedom during pregnancy, pregnancy loss, and abortion. It's unacceptable. We deserve so much better, and we demand it," they said. The Federal Aviation Administration has launched an investigation into Boeing and whether the company failed to ensure its 737 MAX 9 planes were safe following last week's incident in which a cabin panel blew off during an Alaska Airlines flight, causing the cabin to depressurize. The FAA has since grounded the MAX 9 pending inspection of the aircraft. Meanwhile, passengers from Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 have sued Boeing for injuries sustained during the ordeal. In related news, The Lever is reporting Republican presidential hopeful former Boeing board member Nikki Haley helped quash a proposal to compel Boeing to be more transparent about its spending. The measure sought to uncover whether Boeing's lobbying led to more lax regulations in the wake of two major crashes in 2018 and 2019 in Indonesia and Ethiopia, which killed all 346 people on board. The Pentagon's Inspector General says the Pentagon has failed to track some $1 billion in military equipment provided to Ukraine for its fight against Russia's invasion. The weapons in question include javelins, Stinger missiles, night vision devices, and one-way attack drones. This comes as the White House said Thursday U.S. support for Ukraine, quote, has now ground to a halt, unquote, amid stalled negotiations over a new funding package that congressional Republicans are demanding be conditioned on further militarizing the U.S.-Mexico border.
What?
In Taiwan, voters are preparing to cast ballots Saturday.
What? I'm sorry, what? Run that story by me again? Because I did not like the way that it ended. Yeah, start from the top.
Military equipment provided to Ukraine for its fight against Russia's invasion. The weapons in question include javelins, Stinger missiles, night vision devices, and one-way attack drones. This comes as the White House said Thursday U.S. support for Ukraine, quote, has now ground to a halt, unquote, amid stalled negotiations over a new funding package that congressional Republicans are demanding be conditioned on further militarizing the U.S.-Mexico border. In Taiwan, voters are preparing to cast ballots Saturday in a high-stakes presidential and parliamentary.
Oh, I'm pausing. So you're telling me that they want to militarize the Mexico border, and they're going to write that into further packages for Ukraine. So not only do you want to have a war in the Middle East, you want to have a war in Ukraine that you're supporting. Those two wars, financially supporting, and then you want to start I wouldn't even say start, because there's a lot of smuggling going on both ways, but you want to begin a war with people that only have rifles, or maybe some cartels have javelin missiles. Whatever, man. I live in Texas. That does not sound like a fun time for the people that do live in Texas.
Election that's being closely watched by China and the United States. 3 candidates are in a tight race to succeed President Tsai Ing-wen, who is not eligible to run again after serving her 2 4-year terms. The election could help decide whether Taiwan continues to assert its autonomy and strengthen
Oh, I'm typing over here. This dude asked me how was your time working at Best Buy, and I'm like, hello, darkness, my old friend. What's the emoji for gun? Oh wow, we still have the old one here. All right. Well, what if I did this, and then I did the where's that one? Where's that emoji? Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry, I'll do that off screen. Okay.
Ties to the U.S., moves closer to China, or takes what one candidate calls a middle path. And a retrial is underway on the Greek island of Lesbos for 16 rescue workers who helped save the lives of refugees.
I'm sorry. I need to stop half listening to Amy. I'm sorry.
Who crossed the Mediterranean Sea in 2015 and 16. Greek authorities have accused the aid workers of crimes, including espionage and what's been slammed as the criminalization of humanitarian work. Just this week, at least 3 migrants died after their boat sank off Lesbos. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Thank you very much, Amy. That was very informative. I think that was in 9 minutes, she did what NBC News, these assholes, couldn't do in 20 some odd minutes, which drug on, which makes me drag on. You know what? Next time, I'm just going to lead with Democracy Now! Because it seems to get the point across from here on out. There is no reason to watch any of these assholes. Well, sorry, not to you guys. Any of these assholes, NBC, ABC, CBS, first, without watching Democracy Now! First. But yeah, let's see how the Pentagon lost $2.3 billion, trillion dollars. What do you?
Just what's going on with the culture. How in the world could it be that the biggest, greatest fighting entity in the world cannot audit itself until 2018? What's wrong? The fact is we probably wasted hundreds of billions of dollars at the Pentagon through the years through poor management. Is that correct? Well, that'd be a low estimate, would it not?
So how can we possibly cut spending and make government more efficient if we don't even know where the money is going?
In 2001, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld announced that the Department of Defense had lost more than $2.3 trillion.
Frac 2.3.
Let's go full conspiracy theory. What day was that, sir?
$1 trillion in transactions.
At this time, the entire federal budget was only $1.8 trillion, which meant that the military had basically just oopsied away more than a year's worth of the government's entire bankroll.
Look at all this cash, bruh. What would you call it?
The public was furious, to say the least, and rumors quickly started circling about where this money ended.
So what's funny about those stacks of cash is those stacks of cash are pretty real, especially at that point in time. Where within the next couple years, those stacks of cash would be delivered to people that were part of the Northern Alliance. Northern Alliance were our allies in Afghanistan.
Ended up. Fortunately for Rumsfeld and the entire military senior brass, the public announcement of the missing money was made on a very opportune day, September 10th.
2001.
Yes, just one day later, what would have been the news story of the year was immediately overshadowed by the event of the decade, and public opinion about the military flipped on a dime from outrage to adoration. The $2.3 trillion hole in the military's budget was almost forgotten by everybody but the accountants that needed to get to the bottom of it and the conspiracists that pointed to it as proof of the inside job theory. It certainly doesn't look great, and the timing is almost a little bit too convenient. So it's time to learn how money works to find out how to get away with losing trillions of dollars. This week's lesson was made possible by...
Okay, hold on. I gotta use the bathroom. 1 second. What if we did something like this instead? YouTube, Squirtle Sacks. Oh yeah. Can't whistle like this. I mean, I got the lips, but can't do it. One time I was able to figure out how to do the really loud whistle with your lips. Like, I was able to do that for a little bit, and then it was gone. It was gone. Like Squirtle Sacks. Here you go.
By Morning Brew. If the news of trillions of missing dollars broke today, you would be sure to...
We're gonna skip Morning Brew, thank you.
2 million total personnel, and millions more contractors going to support those men and women in uniform. As with any organization, good accounting is crucial. The Department of Defense is required to keep detailed accounts of every purchase and transfer they make, from billion-dollar acquisitions to office supplies. There are certain military ledgers out there with transactions detailing coffee filters for the officer's lounge. But what about accounts for more clandestine purchases? One of the leading theories of where the $2.3 trillion ended up was simply that it was being redirected to projects that the Department of Defense would rather keep off the books. A lot of the military's operations only work if they are not public knowledge. It's no good keeping your alien tech spyware plane under wraps in Area 51 if you need to expense its jet fuel to a middling accountant back in DC.
But they're ignoring the crumbs. I live on crumbs, like a rat. And when you're dealing with the Pentagon, crumbs are worth millions.
The $10,000 toilet seat is a joke I'm sure you have all heard before, but for those of you who haven't, the Air Force came under some public scrutiny a few years ago when it was revealed that they had spent $10,000 on a single replacement toilet seat for their C-5 Galaxy cargo planes. The press and public decided that one of two things had happened to end up with such an outrageously expensive latrine. The simplest and therefore most popular explanation was that the military purchasers were in cahoots with the contractors and getting a kickback from buying overpriced toilet seats. Saying corruption doesn't happen in the military would be naive. But there are some very strict systems in place for purchases like these to make sure this kind of blatant kickback scam is practically impossible. The more entertaining theory is that the military was using toilet covers as some kind of accounting code word for a top secret piece of technology that should actually cost this much money.
To peace.
If you ever look through military expenses, you will find thousands of items that appear to be way too expensive for what they are. Toilet seats are just the funniest example. In an organization that records millions of transactions every month, these $10,000 toilet seats and $20,000 hammers could add up quickly to $1 trillion, all for the sake of keeping the real military hardware under wraps. Unfortunately, neither explanation is true. These toilet seats really did just cost $10,000.
I mean, of
this
course.
wasn't a generic toilet seat.
Yeah, and that's like the thing is like it's over-engineered. I wouldn't say it's over-engineered, but it's engineered very specifically, very precisely, because if anything...
It was actually a cover unique to the laboratory of the C-5.
Exactly.
Any unique component is expensive to make, and any component going on an aircraft is even more expensive to make. Consider that this toilet cover would need to be installed by a technician licensed to work on this unique aircraft, and $10,000 suddenly doesn't sound totally unreasonable. Also, the military does not need to use code words to cover up their books. They can just cover up their books.
Exactly.
Accounting ledgers can be classified as confidential, secret, or top secret, the same way as any other government document. Simultaneously, some accountants working for the military have secret clearance levels as high as top military officers. If a document is sealed as top secret, there is no need to use code words, and the accountants can be as descriptive as they need to be, even when making entries for highly confidential transactions. Out there somewhere exists a purchase invoice for an SR-71, and even Navy SEALs get regular military pay stubs. Alright, so if the missing $2.3 trillion wasn't part of some black ops program or corruption ring, where did the money go? The truth is that it was just lost to some really bad accounting. Any accountant will tell you that as an organization gets larger, keeping the books in order just gets harder and harder. A small business should be really easy. They will normally only have one bookkeeper, and the owner or manager should be able to personally remember most of the transactions that go through the business. A big business will have multiple bookkeepers, each with their own slightly unique way of doing things, and no single person in the company will know the reason behind every transaction. An organization on the scale of the Department of Defense is this problem times 100. The Department of Defense and Department of Veteran Affairs employ a combined 3,300 accountants working in hundreds of different teams. In the 1990s, which was when the $2.3 trillion went missing, the Pentagon had not yet adopted the use of computers for their bookkeeping, and so millions of transactions were processed and recorded using pen and paper, fax machines, and good old-fashioned mail delivery. The problem was that more of their suppliers had started moving to digital records, so all of the different accounting teams had to figure out how to transpose their digital record onto the paper records of the DoD. To make matters worse, some military branches were starting to transition to computers, so the accountants had to turn digital accounts into paper accounts and then back into digital accounts, all with no clear direction on best process. Because of the clearances required for military accounting, it is impossibly difficult for different departments to cooperate on making systems that work with one another. Even something as simple as a phone call to clarify a potential transaction entry mistake might require going through a superior officer who may not have training as an accountant. What would be a 2-minute phone call or an email in a regular company might take days in the Pentagon. On one hand, this is completely justified when the information that these accountants are handling could compromise national security. But on the other hand, this situation was a recipe for disaster. The $2.3 trillion that went missing was not put in a briefcase and walked out the front door. It wasn't laundered to fund a covert operation, and it isn't sitting in a vault somewhere. That $2.3 trillion is simply just unaccounted for. The DoD spent 2 years consolidating their accounting and simply could not explain $2.3 trillion worth of...
But dude, it's missing. Like, where did it go? Where the money at, though? Also, why did this restart? Like, what the hell? Why does it say 19 minutes? Like, oh my god, did it... Oh my god. What is going on with this PC? I have the worst computer in the world. I really do. You would imagine if this was gonna mess up it would mess up like Streamlabs, but it's not. So here we are. It only happens with YouTube. Oh, this is so toast. Hey, I'm dying here. Alright, so yeah, they lost the money. They chalked it up to like accounting issues. Whatever. I think I'm done fighting this thing for tonight. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a stream tomorrow. We'll see. Thank you. Anybody that checks this out, appreciate your time.